Today we're going to be talking about what mapping 200 sales processes has taught me about sales. Now, what is that? That's beautiful. That's what that is right there. That's a sales process map. We're going to be talking about this, how you do it, why you do it. Doesn't matter how you do it. Oftentimes it's most important you just get it down on paper. I'm a sales process junkie. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gabe Larsen. I'm the vice president of growth here at InsideSales.com. It means I've got some sales and marketing responsibilities, background in investment banking, background in consulting, but boy, have I mapped a lot of processes, 200 plus. This is just a couple pictures of me dinking around at a couple companies. I typically like to collect them, usually get about one a month from people just throwing them out my way. And if you ever want to, please do send me your process map. I'll give you some feedback. But I love the concept, and I've had a lot of experience doing it. I ran what we call Momentum. It was our strategic consulting team for a handful of years. I was on the road every single week for literally 2 years and just mapped processes back to back. And there's a lot of differences, but a lot of similarities. And I've seen small companies. I've seen account-based processes. I've seen high velocity. I've seen partner channel models. You see, again, sometimes it's always differences, uniqueness, but man, there's always similarities. But boy, I'm a big believer in you've got to map your process. So let's get into this concept of sales and sales process. I don't know if you know this gentleman, W. Edwards Deming. Not a super popular name, but World War II era, you've got Japan, you've got the US, and this guy introduces some concepts, one that he became very famous for, which is quality. A lot of people know it as TQM, or Total Quality Management. He actually introduced a lot of these ideas in the US, but they were scoffed at originally. They come over to Japan, Japan picks them up, and people don't think much of it until they just start to destroy the United States and so much of what they were doing that people started to take notice. What is this concept of TQM, or process control, or process optimization, and business process? A lot of different terms for it. Well, a lot of it came from this guy. I love the statement: if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. Well, post-World War II, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the good that happened in Japan is credited to this concept that this gentleman introduced, and it was all around process reengineering, process optimization, for total quality management. The problem is we've lost a lot of that. A lot of people don't know what they're doing when it comes to processes, and this is probably the most famous quote I've seen around process mapping. I've never mapped out my sales process beginning to end. Says everybody. That's the problem. And truthfully, having done over 200 sales process maps, having done a lot of sales consulting, what I learned from mapping those 200 sales processes is you have to map your sales process. It's fundamental to sales transformation. It's one of the key foundational items. And if you've not done this exercise, you have got to do it. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, there's 6 steps. I don't want to go into each of them. Some of these are a little too detailed, but I want to hit the high level. I want you to get the concept and see if you can take some of these principles into your own world. So number 1, understand your process stages. 2, it's a structure. 3, it's getting that current state. 4, it's reviewing it for strengths, opportunities. 5, it's getting a future state. And then 6, it's putting a governance. It's actually not that complicated, right? Sometimes a bad plan well executed is better than a good plan poorly executed. That's what it is with sales process. A lot of people are going to say, oh man, I got to have this, or I go to this. I don't know process mapping languages. It's like, look, grab Lucid, throw some charts, throw some shapes on a page, and be done. Oftentimes the conversation is more important than what you do or what you don't do there. And so I want to show you a couple examples of just things I've thrown together, just so you can see that you don't have to be a rocket science. You can just start rocking and rolling on this. So let's get into it. Number 1, understand your process stages. People get a little confused with this step, but oftentimes I find that having consulted with so many organizations, you've got to start somewhere. And that usually means just a 1-page overview of your revenue system. I've seen people do it like this. Again, this is fairly high level. You got marketing over here. We generate some leads to sales development. We've got this kind of inside team. We've got this contract, legal. We've got the clients. Okay, Got it. Okay, it's kind of this high level. I've seen other organizations model it more like this. It's like, okay, we've got a leadership team, then we've got 3 functional areas here, marketing, sales, and then within those we've got these other functional areas, something that just gets something on a page to see. You got to get that big picture, especially if you're going to work with leadership on this. Having done this so many times, I'm more of a detailed guy, so I go, let's get into I like to map it on the wall and, do the 10 by 10 and get everybody as confused, but go just real every single step. You can't start there though. You've got to go big picture so that people can just follow you, so they can track what you're doing. And in process stages is a great concept to be able to follow within that. Next, we're going to skip number 2, defining your structure. I'll mention that briefly. Again, you've got to get some sort of commonality. I don't care what shapes you use. I know there are proper ones. I've reviewed them. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But mostly you just need to have, okay, this is an input, this is an action, this is where I end, this is a decision. Something that is a common language with your organization. But don't look at me for the right answer on that, because I don't care if you use squares or triangles or whatever, as long as, again, there's some general understanding on that. Let's get to number 3. Number 3 is mapping that current state. And this is, I think the biggest problem on this one is that people assume they know the current state. So they just go ahead and throw something down on paper, and you have to do stakeholder interviews here. Call them what you want. Interviews with reps, interviews with the front line, skip meetings, stakeholder interviews. Something that really allows you to feel, taste, and touch from beginning to end how a customer experiences your company, or how a brand new rep experiences his job or her job beginning to end. Pick that perspective and then run with it. This exercise is it's always so enlightening to go through this. And whether you're consulting companies or you have your own business, such a great exercise. Sit down with people, ask them some questions. So I wanted to throw out, because a lot of people then when they sit down, they're like, what would I even ask? Here's a couple of thoughts on that. And I've got plenty more. Feel free to grab me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook, or something like that after this. So when you're talking to demand gen people, here's a couple of questions. Now, how many different lead sources do you have, and what are they? Now, are you appending or enriching leads and lists as they come through your system? How do you route or assign leads from different lead sources? So if you see that, even those first couple of questions, I literally am thinking of that linear process. Like, where do we get stuff? And then what do we do with it? And, how does it get kind of to the end? Now, I love to overlay numbers on that. And so I usually like to say, what are some questions you'd ask to that particular person about their job when it comes to numbers? So what percentage of leads come from each source? Now, notice that depending on who you're talking to, some of these questions may be different, but I want to get kind of the mind rolling here just a little bit. Sales, what would be some questions? How does the sales team generate new business? Once the sales team owns the prospect, what is their strategy and process to close a deal? It's always, a lot of similarities between companies, but a lot of differences. What are the opportunity stages sales reps follow to close deals? Now we're getting tactical. And lastly, what is the average sales cycle? So now, again, I'm going to overlay numbers. So you take those functional areas in marketing and sales development and customer success or sales engineering. See if you couldn't figure out what that linear flow is, understand the questions, and then overlay the numbers on top of it. It has to ask those frontline reps. Now, I usually try to get, you can't usually just go to one rep. It's best to get a couple managers to make sure you get that functional area complete. So once you've got that information, you throw it down into a chart. Now here, you can see I've got some sort of linear flow from left to right. And then I've thrown some numbers in here just as an overlay to see if we got that. Now, this is a fairly simple one. Sometimes yours is fairly simple, and it just needs to be what it is. Don't think you know that you know. Now, I've chosen some shapes here. Again, that's a little more to your prerogative, but we get web leads in this particular use case or instance, and it enters into a marketing automation system and then into a CRM, and then a rep grabs it, And then a rep goes ahead and reaches out. Now you've got this sequence, whether this decision, they contact it, yes. They contact it, no. If no, they leave an email and a voicemail. It looks like their cadence or their persistency's 111. I think that's one phone call, one email, one voice message. And then they update that lead status, and then they're done talking to that person. Now, if they did get a hold of them and there's interest, they do some qualifying questions, and then they move this through some sort of post, deal stage opportunity strategy. High level, that's what we're looking at for this current state. And I wanted to simplify it and throw some of these numbers on. So now that I've got it on paper, and guys, this isn't that difficult. Now that I've got it, we need to sit down and just talk about it. And this usually is great to get in a room of a couple smart people, typically from the functional areas, and say, okay, so this is what actually is happening. I know you think you know what's happening, but let's talk about it. And I usually do like to try to talk about strengths, because most people want to raise their hand and be like, well, why are we doing that? And if you can get 3 strengths to 1 weakness, it's usually better, but at least start with the strengths. So in here, fantastic. They've got a marketing automation tool. If you're running an inbound lead flow like this use case that we're showing, it's typically great to have some sort of email automation tool. Number 2 up here, you can see right up in that right-hand corner, I'm covering it with my face just a little bit there, is updating those lead statuses. Guys, great organizations not just have lead statuses, but they've got a structure around it, what they mean, why they use it, etc. And then I love that number 3, submitting opportunities for approval. If you've got a sales development team, man, we've gone high level on this, but that's okay. If you got a sales development team, it's great when they submit an opportunity. They'll move it to stage 1, and then there is formally, if possible, some sort of approval or rejection concept, and then an associated closed loop process. They reject it, it goes back to sales development. If it's approved, it moves forward, but the sales development team is notified. If you can make that happen, I mean, that is great, and I think these guys have that. A little bit higher level. I prefer to go into more details, but let's go with the example here. Okay, next slide. Now that we've got the current state strengths, let's talk about some of the weaknesses. Now, one of the things you're seeing, and this happens more often than people realize, especially in bigger companies, when a web lead comes in, it doesn't as often or quick as you think hit your CRM instance. Now, this is often a disconnect. The sales rep will see it, and the lead creation time was, let's say it's 8 a.m., but really they were on a 15-minute batch or a 30 or an hour or a 24-hour. I'm not sure. But they'll sometimes have this batch flow where the lead is actually created from the source, and then it's created in CRM 24 hours later, and that batch time can get messy. 15 minutes is not bad. You might want to look at it. The next thing you've got going is kind of this concept of routing. When it enters into the CRM, the rep has to basically go in and find that. There's no notification to it, so they just have to go in and update their queues and see if anything new has hit it. I don't really like it when I say their queues, but in this instance, it was a general queue that they'd then go and find it, and there was no real routing rules there. The response time, 18.5 hours, that's not great. It doesn't matter what study you look at. You don't want to be sitting at a full day. And I think that's, part of the process problem here. Batch time probably doesn't help. That queue doesn't help either. In this particular instance, now let's not go into that. But there's multiple reasons that I think are probably leading to that. Maybe there's just no reporting around it as well. I didn't love that persistency. I'm hitting a number here. So you got 2 numbers, a 111, that's 1 email, 1 phone call, 1 voice message. I don't know, maybe depending on how good this lead is, if it's a terrible lead, maybe just throw it into nurture. If it's good, maybe up that persistency. And then number 5 here is that sales development handoff. I love to submit the opportunity, but this company had a real hard time figuring out, there's no automation understanding around territories. And so people were getting confused about, okay, who should I actually set this for? Because there were actually multiple reps in a territory. Now, some of these points may just be a good discussion. You may say, you know what, that's what we've got on batch time. That's fine. You may say we need to dive into this particular rep spending a ton of time playing with queues and figure that. So a lot of this first part is to just discuss the strengths and the weaknesses, but ideally come out with something concrete like, hey, here are two or three things that are, just a big problem. Now, couple things I typically see here. Certainly the numbers, you can always benchmark, so you got to watch numbers. Number two, anytime there's a handoff, buckle up. You're going to run into problems because as a manufacturing plant would consider, anytime you've got defects, you need to be looking for speed, you need to be looking for quality, and that's a big problem. There's so many more kind of standard ones. This concept right here of persistency, big problem on prioritization. So many people are just sitting down and that's who I'm going to go after today. There's no real strategy on attacking high priority contacts, leads, or accounts. So there's a lot of things to be thinking about, but hopefully that example gave you just a little bit of an idea now. So you got the conversation. Hopefully it was fruitful. Now you got to move to a future state and get those tangible action items into something new. So how do you do that? Well, hopefully you change just a couple things. And in this one, we did some very, very simple. I prefer to see a lot of movement from current to future, but let's just highlight some of the things that we went ahead and did. So we went ahead and worked with IT and we got that batch process so that it was a little tighter. Does that make all the world's problems go away? Probably not, but it's a good start. Let's take the baby steps that we can, the levers we can pull. Got rid of that rep actually going through it and got some easier routing. So literally he was notified or she was notified and we could then just immediately attack that lead that came to them. Response time jumped down significantly due to some of the process changes and just some of the reporting and pushing on the reps to do it. Couple other things right here down at the bottom. We changed this persistency to more of a 3x3x3, so 9 total touches over about 10 days. It's pretty solid, especially again these being higher value leads. Went ahead and changed some of the routing capabilities for the sales development reps just so we could be very clear as to who get the opportunity that they're working on. And then right here at the very end, submit up for approval and auto email for rep. I didn't highlight in the challenges, but when those people were going ahead and finalizing their deals, there was a little bit of a miscommunication and they went ahead and put in that last step. So these are just some of the things. So we made some changes. You see some boxes move around, some names change, some numbers. Those are our goals we're going after. These are the things we've done, and now we've got a future state. Now we've got to start thinking about how to execute or get to that. And I feel like this is where a lot of companies go south. They actually do throw something on paper. Now they typically throw something more like a process stage on paper. They get a couple boxes. Very rarely do they go through the exercise of stakeholder interviews, structured questions, formal mapping process, formal discussion, formal review of a future state. So not a lot of people go through that, but even if they get that far, which out of hundreds of companies, I literally only saw a couple where I could literally walk in and they give me a solid process map. Probably I can think of one or two. But if you do, man, that decays so fast. You throw it down on paper, you got something, you review it one time, and then never to be seen or heard of again. So this last step, following a governance structure, look, you just need to have that document. Try to make it a living document. Review it quarterly if you can. Find a way to have it be part of an annual review or part of your year-long kind of, not year-long, but end of year, next FY planning. So find a way to utilize it, because if not, it's a great one-time exercise, and even if you do that, I promise it's worth it. If you're really good, if you could find a way to get it in there so that it is reviewed. So, you watch it, things will go south fairly quickly. And so always having that on hand certainly does help. So there you have it. Thanks so much for tuning in. 6 steps to map your sales process. Again, get those stages, get the structure, map the current state, stakeholder interviews, review that in a group, ideally with functional areas, get that future state down, and then begin making those changes. Last but not least, see if you can't govern that. Review it periodically, I would recommend once a quarter. So thanks so much for tuning in. Again, this is Gabe Larsen. I will be offended if you don't add me on some sort of social network. Would love for you to participate in our Playmakers group for salespeople. Playmakers they do things differently. You can catch us on Facebook at the Playmakers Sales Group. You get the bit.ly up there. And for everybody, have a fantastic day.